Hello, my name is David Ricardo and I was born April 19, 1772 in London. I was the third son of my family. My father made a fortune on the London Stock Exchange. When I was 14, I joined my father's business and showed a good grasp of economic affairs. In 1793 I married my wife, Priscilla Ann Wilkinson. Then I converted to Christianity, becoming a Unitarian. This caused problems with my father and meant that I had to establish my own business. I continued as a member of the stock exchange, where my ability won me the support of an eminent banking house. I did so well that in a few years I acquired a fortune. This enabled me to pursue my interests in literature and science, particularly in mathematics, chemistry, and geology. In 1799 I read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, and for the next 10 years I studied economics. My first pamphlet was published in 1810, entitled The High Price of Bullion, a proof of the depreciation of banknotes. In 1814, at the age of 42, I retired from business. I did not speak often, but my free trade views were received with respect, although they opposed the economic thinking of the day. I made friends with a number of eminent men, among whom were the philosopher and economist James Mill, the utilitarian philosopher Jeremy Bentham, and Thomas Malthus. In 1817, I published Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, in which I analyzed the distribution of money among the landlords, workers, and owners of capital. I found the relative domestic values of commodities were dominated by the quantities of labor required in their production, rent being eliminated from the cost of production. I concluded that profits vary inversely with wages, which move with the cost of necessaries, and that rent tends to increase as population grows, rising as the costs of cultivation rise. I maintain that the economy generally moves towards a standstill. My analysis is rooted in a modified version of the labor theory of value. I held out the belief that the rate of profit for society as a whole depends on the amount of labor necessary to support the workers who farm the most barren land that can still maintain agriculture. This model breaks land down into categories based on average fertility rates. The most fertile land naturally produces more food than land of poorer quality. As a result, it commands a higher rent. Land utilized for agriculture receives no rent, with all of its earnings going to cover labor and capital costs. The difference between the output from the least fertile land, which can still be farmed, and that of a higher quality constitutes the source of rent on the better land. As the population grows, poorer land must be cultivated. In order to meet the growing demand, the cost of rent for good land then increases. This, coupled with the fact that poor land necessitates increased labor input to maintain minimal output, results in falling profit levels. As rents rise, profits fall. Essentially, rent costs gobble up profits as the population increases. Since profits lead to reinvestment, and thus growth, rising rent costs indirectly prevent economic progress. In my model, the interests of landowners directly oppose those of general society. I preempted Karl Marx in describing adversarial class relations. Marx, in fact, based a great deal of his economic theory on my writings. Although Marx identified capitalists, not landlords, as the source of societal grief, he co-opted my labor theory of value. Marx also utilized my forecast of economic stagnation in predicting the working class uprising. When capitalism eroded its own underpinnings, the resulting misery was expected to bring social strife and revolution. It is unlikely that I would have supported Marx's revolutionary brand of political economics, but the ties between the schools of thought are undeniable. It is ironic that although my ideas helped provide a basis for Marxist critiques of the capitalist system, my own policy recommendations, like those of Thomas Malthus, are grounded in the doctrine of free trade. I believe that the Corn Laws, in particular, constituted a burden to the agricultural economy. He believed that these trade barriers kept food prices artificially high and encouraged a bloated rent rate. In Parliament I actively campaigned against the Corn Laws as well as other government interventions. Essentially, this economic stance mirrors Adam Smith's teachings. The market, although imperfect, is best left untouched. Government action only prevents the economy from righting itself. Although I did not share Smith's complete confidence in the market, I recognize that tampering with the system would only result in further economic stagnation. I was concerned about the population growing too rapidly, in case it depressed wages to the subsistence level, reduced profits and checked capital formation. Sadly, illness forced me to retire from Parliament in 1823 and I died on September 11th. That same year at Gatcombe Park, which is now the home of the Princess Royal and her family. I was 51.